Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kelly's Chronicles. So happy to have you guys back with us here this week. Hope everybody is enjoying the fall season. We are almost into Halloween, Thanksgiving. I love the holidays. I love the holidays. We have got one of our favorite guests back here with us this week, Dad, Chuck. How has your week been? How have you been doing?
Well, it was a eventful week. We had laid flooring in a big chunk of the house, and we were do the living room. So we started on the living room, and we got about a quarter or a third of the living room floored, and there was a terrible squeak in the floor, and it was like all around. It was a patch in the floor where somebody at some time had dropped a heavy object and broke the floor because it's particle board. This
Yeah,
is a trailer, so it has particle board. But it
right.
was 5/8, so it's pretty thick part. But they broke the floor and they put this wimpy patch on there. So, well, I went and I just did some what I thought was sufficient pat to bolster up the patch a little bit and put it all back together. Then we laid a little bit more floor, and the squeak was just awful. I mean, it sounded like something was dying in the floor. So I said, we're not gonna do this. So I pulled the floor up, and I went in there, and I mean, I attacked this floor. I mean, I went in there and put a 4 foot piece of 2x8, or 2x6. The floor joists were 2x6, and I put a big chunk of 2x6 in there and wedged it in, glued it, screwed it. I mean, boom, it was in there. And then
So
I put some other 2x4s and glued everything and screwed it and everything. And there's no more squeak. There
nice.
is no more. It's gone. I killed it. And we're about now where we were before we tore the floor up to kill the squeak. So yeah, so we're making
Guys are
progress. I would say we're probably a little over half of the living room done.
that's good.
And this is a big living room.
It is a
Living
big
room and dining room in here is over 300 square feet.
it's a
So
sized
so we have
area.
300 square feet of black vinyl or
Well, it's like
laminate
dark,
flooring.
dark brown.
If you want it, come and get it. I mean, we'll give it. And it's really good industrial grade. I mean, the flooring that we had down here, the black stuff or dark brown,
Yeah, it's
it
dark.
was really heavy duty. It was, I mean, the best you can get, and it was probably $5-6 a square foot easily. And we got stuff now is like $2 a square foot, but it's good. I mean, it's good. It'll last for a while. And so
I'm happy you
yeah,
guys are
so
getting
that was my week.
that
Put
was your
down,
week.
tear
It's just
up, squeaky weaky. Yeah, and then plus we went to the temple. I subbed for a guy, and Mom subbed for a woman on Thursday,
okay.
and it was kind of fortunate because Thursday was a temple day,
Oh, that's
and it
good.
was wonderful.
That's good. I know that you guys went over there yesterday, and I was like, oh, they never go on Thursdays. I wonder why they're over there because
Yeah,
it's
we went. Yeah, really. So we went Tuesday and Thursday, and we'll go again tomorrow.
in tomorrow.
So it'll be a 3 day temple week, and
Temple worship.
wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm happy you guys are doing what you love. That's always what you want out of life. So now
Yep.
you are the master at fixing things. I will say that. So squeaky floors and broken cabinets, that is your expertise. I would
Yeah.
say. Dad, if anybody knows Dad, he can fix just about anything. I would say that Dad is a very skilled carpenter, and I learned carpentry through him. I worked in construction and carpentry for about 20 years. From the time I was about 19 into
Yep.
my 30s, I was always with you, Dad, doing some kind of project, fixing up some kind of house that we were working on. But
Yep.
One thing, um, one thing that I do love is that from what, even when I was a kid, you would draw your architectural ideas on napkins. So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
one of my favorite memories. Is you drawing things on napkins, and you put the square footage on the napkin or on your hand. Yeah.
yeah.
So
I think that's probably where some of the great ideas of the world have been drawn on napkins.
napkins and hands.
Yeah. And we had when I was in the Coast Guard, there was a guy. He was a lieutenant um, in my office there in operational law enforcement, and he we were out at lunch one day, and he said, "I got this idea," and he started drawing on a napkin.
On a napkin. Yep.
Yeah,
What
and that became the Aerostar program, which is that they use that even now on border security. On the southern border, they have aero was it aeroflot aeros not Aerostar aero something I can't remember the
something that
uh,
he created.
anyway it's a balloon. It's a balloon with a radar inside of it,
Okay.
and they inflate it with hydrogen, and it has a tether. They bring it in on a pickup truck or whatever, like we had them on boats. So we were down doing aeros. Geez, what was it? Can't remember the title. Anyway, it was down, and we had ships down in the Yucatan Strait between Mexico and Cuba, and that's where all the druggies were coming through. And we had aerostat on a ship, which has a 200-mile range. You can see for 200 miles in any direction, and the Yucatan Straits are about probably about uh, 200 miles, 150, 200 miles across, and we could see Mexico, Yucatan Peninsula, and Cuba on our radar,
Wow.
and nobody could sneak through. So anyway, that was drawn on a napkin.
Yeah.
The whole concept. Yep.
On
So
the napkin. I
and they're
remember.
still using it.
One of my favorite bands is My Chemical Romance, and I remember the lead singer Gerard Way wrote some of his first songs on napkins in the subway. I think it was a
There
subway.
you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think John Lennon wrote some songs on napkins.
probably.
They
I'm
have
sure
still have his napkins in museums.
he drew his stuff on.
What's that spot? What's that spot on that? You wrote Imagine on a napkin, but what's that spot right there? Oh, that's barbecue.
That's barbecue from lunch.
I have barbecue.
That's right. But many
Yeah.
many things have been created in this world written on napkins. Um,
Yeah.
so that's I'm glad you guys been having a good week and getting some stuff done around the house because now it's indoor projects that you're going to be working on. So
Yeah. Because it's been raining.
we're just kind of
Been raining
yes, that's what you guys need. That
in the deserts of Idaho. It's been raining. Wow.
now we're in
Oh
Nashville
yeah. I'm sorry.
and we're taking a 3-day break. Couldn't go home, so we're just hanging out in Nashville at a hotel till we head out on our next adventure. So now, when we left off in our last podcast, we're down in Georgia now, and we
Yep.
talked about doing a podcast on the interesting aspects of tobacco and how tobacco is cultivated. So
Yep.
we discussed it together, and I believe that is something we want to talk about this week, is the cultivations of tobacco.
Okay.
That had a lot of really interesting you had a lot of interesting experiences with tobacco because you worked firsthand with it. I think that that would be really
Yep.
something fun to talk about this week. So we'll go right into uh, life in the tobacco fields, a little bit about life in Georgia, a little bit more about that and home life. Now, the you told a couple of fun stories about the boys that you worked with, all those big, stocky Georgia boys that could lift 500 pounds of tobacco bushel. So, kind of just jump right into tobacco.
Okay. Yeah. that portion of southern Georgia was ideal for tobacco and peanuts. It was very sandy soil and watermelons too. Any kind of melons are do great in sandy soil.
I love watermelon.
Tobacco, because of the climate. Now tobacco is historically grown up into Maryland. Maryland
Oh,
had
I
a
didn't know that.
lot of tobacco fields, and they I don't think they were. Now Kentucky was one. Kentucky
Yeah.
tobacco was world famous, and so that there was a divide a area where you could grow it and you couldn't grow it. Now the stuff that grew up in the north was more cigarette tobacco and pipe tobacco
Mm.
that was slow burning, a very good smell and good taste to it. The burley and the some of the other Maryland and Kentucky tobaccos are very very good. Now
What did they grow in Georgia?
was famous for Georgia was famous for wrapper tobacco. That's what I where I was involved in. And wrapper tobacco is a larger. You harvest the cigarette tobacco and the pipe tobacco. You get the small tender leaves, and you
Mm.
don't let it get too big, and then they
Okay.
process that. Whereas in this wrapper tobacco, which is used to wrap cigars, is a huge leaf. I mean, these are leaves
Really
that are
good.
probably a foot and a half long and about 8 to 10 inches wide. They're the bottom leaves on a plant because the plant grows. It's basically all you see on a tobacco plant is the leaves. You don't see. They do flower, but out of the top. So the
I've
main
seen them like
part of the
upside down.
it'd be like say like a say like a corn stalk with no ears of corn on it, just the leaves, and that's what tobacco is, just the leaves, and the bottom leaves is what we harvested. And we go out in the fields, and we had a sled uh, pulled by a mule, and that would go
Okay.
down. The rows were they were spaced quite wide, probably about 6 to 8 feet wide, so you could harvest it. So you wanted to have enough space between the rows to run that sled down through there to harvest.
Mm.
And we would go out and we would pick the bottom leaves off, and we would always avoid the tobacco worms. There was a worm that ate tobacco leaves, and it was probably 3 or 4 inches long, huge
Whoa.
caterpillar, and it had a spike on its tail that was red, and the spike was half an inch long, and you didn't want it. It was like, no, don't. Even these were experienced tobacco farmers, and they didn't mess with the tobacco worms. I mean, they did not
Yikes.
want that barb to get. I don't know if it would. I don't know, and I don't know if anybody ever got hit with that barb, but we did not want to know. We didn't want to know because we knew nicotine was very poisonous, and these caterpillars are loaded with it. So we
Yeah,
just
it's like their
we
whole body.
didn't mess with them. Didn't mess with them. So anyway, we'd harvest these tobacco leaves and throw them in this sled, and the sled would go out of the tobacco field into a barn, and in the barn were women, lots of women. These were the wives and daughters of the farmers, and their job was to string the tobacco leaves. And what they would do is they would take about 2 or 3 leaves, and these are huge leaves, and they had a stick about 4 feet long, or maybe 5 feet, 4 or 5 feet long. And it was like a broomstick, only it was square. Okay. And they had these like they had boards on the wall that were about 2 or 3 inches apart, and he would stick that stick in there, the end of the stick, and it would lock in that litll groove in between the boards. And then they would stand at the end of the post, end of the stick, and they would have they would bring the tobacco in and stack it next to them, and uh, yeah, and they would grab 2 or 3 leaves, and they would wrap the string around the stem of the leaf. Then
Okay.
they would put it up on the very end of the stick, close to the wall, and then they would go across the stick and do the same thing on the other side. So you'd end up with this zigzag string holding, I don't know how, probably 50 leaves on this stick,
Which
right?
had to be
And then they
heavy.
would, so they call that stringing. You're a stringer, and it was always the women. I don't know. Maybe it's because it wasn't that heavy of work or that dirty. It wasn't very. It was pretty clean work, and it could be done inside.
It's
And
probably a
the
little bit more
women,
intricate too
that's
with your
who did the
fingers.
stringing. Yeah, they
Yeah.
did the stringing. Okay, now after the stringing was done, then they would have a rack inside this barn where they would put this sticks that were all strung, and they would put them over on this rack, and then we would come in and we would take the racks and we take them out in the tobacco barn. And sometimes we just have loose sticks, and sometimes it'd be on the rack in a truck, in a pickup truck. And we go out to the barn, and they were all over South Georgia were tobacco barns, and they were normally crudely made. A lot of times made out of slash wood, which is the bark of a tree. That when they're sawmilling, the bark of the tree and the first cuts called slash. And they would make these barns. A lot of them were made out of slash, some maybe out of logs, but they weren't beautiful. They were just, and they never painted them. They're always like just bare wood, all weathered and everything. And inside this barn, this tobacco barn, they would have a couple of big heaters on the floor. They were propane fired heaters that put out, I don't know, lots of heat.
Mm.
And they would use some of the tobacco now was naturally cured. That's the difference. Some tobacco was naturally cured. They didn't have the heaters in the barns, and others were heat cured. So that's kind of the two categories of curing tobacco. It's either heat cured or natural cured. So anyway, we go in this barn, and this barn had, it would be probably, the ceiling was about 20 to 25 feet high in normal
Mm.
tobacco barns. And and then they had these logs across from one side to the other. And the barn was probably, it would be like 20, 25 feet high and about 20 to 25 feet long.
Okay.
And if you got something that wide, you have to have a log because you're spanning 25 feet. So
Yeah.
you have a log up there, and there would be these logs, and they would be the same distance apart as the strung tobacco sticks, a little bit and a little bit less. But basically, you would have like maybe 6 to 8 inches on each of the logs on the ends of the sticks. That wouldn't have strung tobacco on it. That'd just be a bare stick. And so we would climb up 20 feet up on the top of this tobacco barn,
Oh
and
my
then we would call it handing. Then you would start handing, and you would hand. There would be like guys stationed on logs all the way to the ceiling. It'd be like two, three, maybe four guys with span. They'd be like foot on one log and foot on the other
Oh,
log.
so they
They'd be
created a
like
chain, like
their
a
legs would be
huge
like
chain.
4 or 5 feet apart, and they'd be handing these sticks up to the top. You start at the top and work down. So they would hand in the tobacco. So you harvested, strung, now you're handed. So you hand it up to the top, and then this tobacco would when the barn was full, then you had to then the farmer had to make the decision on whether he wanted to fire cure or natural cure the tobacco. And if it's a natural cure, the tobacco barn usually had like spaces between the boards on the side of the building so the air could circulate through there. And it would take all summer
Oh
to cure
wow.
these going up into it would be like you would be harvesting all summer long. But the tobacco that went into the air cured barns first, like in say in June, or even in, because it's real hot down there. You don't
Yeah.
have a winter. And I can remember, I
Okay.
can remember one. I remember one December. one December, I went out to catch school bus, and there was
Yeah.
frost in the ground, and we're all going, "Whoa, whoa, what is that? What's that white stuff?" It was frost. It wasn't
It's
snow. It was
frost.
just frost. And I mean, and I still remember that because everybody got really excited about frost on the grass. So anyway, it was real warm. So they could probably put stuff, they could harvest and put stuff in the barns probably in May or June,
Wow.
and that stuff would be there until like September or October, air curing. Now, if it was fire cured, you could do it in about a month. You could, and what happened was the leaves would, when they would cure, they would turn into what you know as tobacco. It's a brown, dried, looks like a dead leaf that's been
Mhm.
laying on the ground underneath the tree. That's what cured tobacco looks like. It's a brown, it turns it brown from
Yeah.
green to brown. And then then we've we've harvested, we've strung, we've handed. Now it's time to bring it down out of the barn. So you do the same thing in reverse. You start at the bottom of the barn and work up, handing down instead of up. So you put the guys up there spanning the logs, and they're handing the tobacco down, and then it would go back into the barn where the women were, and the women would unstring the tobacco. So they strung the tobacco. Now they're going to unstring it. Okay, so they basically they would take they were very careful because you don't want to drop it. You don't want it's kind of fragile.
Yeah, I
This
would
tobacco,
imagine.
cured tobacco, is kind of fragile. I mean, you can't just like with the leaves, the green leaves, you can just throw it around. It doesn't hurt it. But when it's cured, it has to be not. You can touch it, but you don't want to get it too rough with it, or it'll come apart.
Right.
So
Single dried leaf.
then they had the women unstringing, and they would take the leaves off one bundle at a time, and they would lay it gently down. They usually had tables in there, and you lay it on the tables. Then you would bag it, and
Okay.
they would take a piece of burlap. Geez, I mean, this piece of burlap was probably 10 feet wide, or and 10 by 10 piece of
Okay.
burlap.
Wow, that's some big
They
piece of
would
burlap.
lay the leaves in the center of the burlap in a circle with the stem ends to the center. So the stem ends would all be in the center, and the leaves would be in a circle around that.
Okay.
And once they got it all sacked, and it's unstrung, and now it's bagged. So they would bag it, and then they would take the corners of this canvas and bring it together over the center and tie it in a knot. So you'd have,
Hmm.
you know, the basically a big knot in the center where there's four ends would be
Right.
tied together. And then you could reach in and grab a hold of those knots and lift it up. And I seen 17-year-old boys reach in there and grab that knot and lift a 500-pound bale of tobacco and throw it in the back of a truck with one hand.
Man, didn't get into a fight with
Uh,
one of those kids.
there was some
Turning in some.
there was some stout boys. Yeah, there was some stout boys, and then they would take it down, and it was all loaded in the truck. They'd have these just a regular half-ton pickup, just back in the 50s, and they didn't have these giant trucks like you got now. These were
Wasn't like
smaller
my truck.
trucks. They were still like quarter-ton, half-ton trucks, and
Yeah.
they throw 1,500 pounds of tobacco in there. They put two in first, where they were lapping over the sides, and one right in the middle to hold them in, to hold so they have three bales in there. And then we drive to Valdosta with this tobacco on there, and they had a big sale barn down in Valdosta where all these farmers are bringing their tobacco, and they'd bring it in the barn, and they would check in with the barn master, whatever, and the auctioneer, I guess, because it was a tobacco auction, what it was.
Yeah.
And they would bring the bales in, and they would open them up, and lay them in rows on the floor, and they would tag them. You have different farmers had their tags on these bales, and the auctioneer would come in, and he'd have the buyers there from the tobacco companies, and he would start that song, that
Oh,
auctioneer song.
ocean song.
Just singing that song, and he would walk backwards through these bales, between these rows. I mean, there was hundreds of these bales of tobacco in there, and he would walk backwards down a row with the buyers following him, and he would be just chirping. I mean, just singing that song, and 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 then they would bid. These buyers would bid on these different bales of 500-pound bales of tobacco, and and that's how the cigar manufacturers got their tobacco to make their cigars.
So
And I'm not sure if
are we talking like pretty big time cigar manufacturers coming to these
yes,
Georgia?
yes,
Wow.
that was Valdosta, Georgia was probably at that time was probably the world's leading sailor, leading providers of wrapper tobacco.
So
So
people
if
were
there were
coming from all
cigars
over the
made,
country.
and that they were no, they were coming from everywhere.
Yeah,
There's people there from Jamaica. There was from all over the. See that Cuba was at that time was, you know,
Cuba was kind of
it
the jam,
was
wasn't it?
it was pre Castro.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
Castro didn't come into power till 1960.
Hmm.
So this was back in the 50s. They were still making lots of cigars in Cuba, and Cuban cigars to this day
Are
are the best in the world. They're big, huge things too. They're like a
I've
foot long, and I mean they're huge cigars.
a lot of
But
the
that tobacco,
truckers.
the wrapper tobacco for those Cuban cigars, a lot of it came from Valdosta, Georgia.
That's cool. Like I've actually
So
seen
and
a
Florida,
Cuban cigar, which is like great because a
right?
lot of the drivers on
Yeah,
my tour or like that I work with, some of them are Cuban, but some of them are like cigar, like that they go into all these neat cigar shops. Some cigar shops are kind of underground, and so
yeah,
they'll be like, "You want to see something really cool?" And they'll like bring out a Cuban cigar. I'm like, "Whoa,"
yep,
so that's really cool.
yep. Yeah, and there's a lot of cigar manufacturers in Florida and in Georgia. There was some up around Atlanta and stuff. So yeah, they were. It was.
So just
I feel got a sense, almost a sense of pride, knowing that I was involved in that industry and know that what I was doing was, you know, some of the finest tobacco anywhere, and
absolutely.
for that I'm not sure if they use that tobacco for cigarettes or pipe tobacco. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think they did. I think it was pretty much reserved for cigars. And anyway,
I've
yeah,
definitely
and
I used to smoke a few cigars when I smoked, and Danny got me to stop smoking. But I've definitely had some really disgusting cigars and some really good cigars. You definitely tell the difference.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure you smoked
yeah.
cigars in your day too, back when you used to smoke.
Not when I was in. No, I was too young to smoke in
No,
Georgia.
I'm not talking about when you were younger. I'm talking about like when you
Oh,
like were older and you could
yeah,
actually like smoke. So
yeah. I smoked for about 25 years. I had a few cigars. I was
had a few cigars.
Cigars were to me were like you could smoke a cigarette, nobody really, but you lit up a cigar, man, you wiped out the whole room.
Yes.
If there was anybody in that room, or if there was anybody in that train station
Yeah. I
or that
love the smell of a
auditorium,
cigar.
where
I
you'd
love the
be
smell of a
gagging
cigar.
on your smoke, like put
I
that thing
know,
out.
but I
Yeah,
love
they're
that smell.
they're pretty odoriferous, I think is the word. They're very strong, a very
Yes.
strong, distinct odor of a cigar. Oh, another thing, the family that I worked for, just one family doing this tobacco, and they kind of adopted me because I was Air Force brat. I was, and but they had a couple of sons and older boys, and don't remember any my age, but they kind of adopted me and let me work with them, and become really a part of that farm and that industry. And
That's awesome.
at the end of the day was special
Okay.
because we'd go down to the farmhouse and had a huge porch, and we'd sit on that porch, and the woman, the wife, farmer's wife, would cook a giant pot of boiled peanuts.
Ah,
And boiled peanuts are made from green peanuts. They're not, then you have to pour off the water about 2 or 3 times because green peanuts have got some kind of toxic stuff in that you don't want to beat unless you boil it and pour off the water and salt. Everything is salted. And that's the main snack food of the South is boiled peanuts. You can still go down there. You drive
oh,
down through Georgia,
yeah.
and there's boiled peanut stands all over the place. Come and get your boiled peanut.
Oh, I
So
know what to get you for
we
Christmas.
eat.
We're going through Georgia. I know what to get you for Christmas now. Because I remember as a kid, you open up a big old can of boiled peanuts. You're like, boiled peanuts. I got my hands on some boiled peanuts. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I'm like,
and
this is
everybody's going,
boiled
"Ugh, how
peanuts.
can you eat those things?"
And
Yeah, everybody's going, "How can you eat those things?"
so much. That's awesome. Now,
Yeah, yeah.
it's such a yummy.
Boiled peanuts and sweet tea.
And oh yes, that's right.
Got to have the sweet tea, or we have Royal Crown Cola,
Oh,
RC Cola. Yeah.
RC cool.
Because that was
I
the
love
cheapest. That was cheaper than Pepsis or Cokes. So you get a big old bottle for like a nickel, and we'd have boiled peanuts and either RC cola or sweet tea. Yeah,
You saw my
it was
title for
fun.
our last podcast: "Sweet Tea and Honeybees."
Yeah,
I love
and another thing about the tobacco barns.
it. Okay.
The tobacco barns, since they were open, and there was very little, they weren't a closed building.
Like,
The wasps and hornets would get up in there.
oof.
And they would always, the boys that were the bravest boys would be the toppers. They would be up on the very top of the barn, handing and unhanded, or handing and not unhanding, handing. They'd be up in the top of the barn where the wasp and hornets. They always build their nest way up high. And I mean, sometimes like one time we were in this one barn and we were handing, and this guy stuck his head in a wasp nest,
Oh my gosh.
and the wasp started biting him on the head, and he just let go, and he fell from the top of the barn all the way down and landed on one of the burners, one of the cookers.
Oh my
Cut the
gosh.
top all down, and he just got up and brushed himself off. Said, "Daggone walk, I'm gonna take that nest down."
Boys, I swear. You better
Yeah,
get there with your Mr. Ham's trick, burning them out.
no, I'll tell you what. Those Georgia farm boys, you don't mess with them guys. I mean, they were tough
Yeah.
because they were everything was manual labor. About 95% of what they did was manual labor,
Crazy.
and they were strong, and they didn't take no business off nobody.
Growth
They,
from no
they
wasp
would take you out.
wasp nest to stop them. They need Mr. Ham
Yep.
over there with the fishing hook and the fire. I got
Gonna
fish.
cut a switch on you. Yeah.
That is crazy. I
Yeah.
can imagine there's probably some pretty brutal wasps nests up in those barns, just building them as big
Yeah.
as they could possibly build them.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I got some more stories about. A story about Mr. Ham. We got on a previous blog we had talked about Mr. Ham being the owner of the trailer park. Well,
Yep.
there were inside the trailer park were these huge pecan trees,
Oh.
And it's pecan, not pecan. It's pecan. That's Georgia, daggone it. Pecan tree. And they had a lot of nuts on them. In the fall, we'd be in our trailer and you'd hear the nuts fall on the trailer, toon 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 toon, you know. But he would not let us pick those pecans up. They'd fall on our trailer and be laying by our trailer, and he wouldn't let us. No, don't take them.
Oh,
He'd come by, he'd come by and pick them all up and sell them. And we didn't get we got some,
I was gonna
but
say, how
we
you
did not harvest.
got any of them?
Yeah, we did not harvest pecans. And he had fig trees too. He had lots of fig trees, and he didn't like figs, so we got all the figs we wanted.
Oh, fine.
But yeah, the pecans are Mr. Hands. And another thing is, you've heard of fire ants?
Oh, yes.
Ever heard of fire ants?
Oh, I definitely
Fire
have.
ants
Okay, I
came.
never really
They
had
came. They
experience
came
with
to
fire.
America in Mobile, Alabama. That's where they came in, was Mobile, Alabama, and they were in South Georgia back in the 50s. And I'm telling you, they were a lot, not a lot, but there were some. And when I'd be mowing the grass, I'd mow over a fire ant nest, and they would come up the handlebars and start biting on you. Yeah. So you had to be real careful when you're mowing the lawn. And
Where did fire ants come
what?
from?
South America.
Oh,
South America. Yeah, they're from like Brazil or somewhere, Venezuela or somewhere. That's what
darn it.
they came ashore in Mobile, and Mobile, Alabama was not that far. You just see Alabama and Georgia share a border.
Yes, they do.
And so they came ashore in Mobile, and it's probably only maybe 100 miles from where I was living. So
Oh,
they were there
yeah,
way back in the 50s. And now they're everywhere.
they are.
Anyway, I just
Well, not
I
everywhere.
just throw
They
that
get
in there.
cold.
Another thing, oh, I was going to tell a snake story. I remember that. I was going to tell a snake story. I'll tell you a snake story. Okay. One time I was out because I just run all over the woods there. I was crazy. I mean, there's snakes everywhere, and I run all over the woods all the time. Yeah. Not barefooted. You didn't go barefooted in South Georgia because you get hookworms. So I didn't go barefooted, but I'd be out running around in my tennis shoes or whatever. And I saw this one tree one day. I was out there by myself for some reason. I
Okay.
saw this tree, and it just had all these neat limbs sticking out right next to the ground, and it
Of
went
course.
way up there. And I said, "Man, that's a climbing tree right there. I'm gonna climb that tree. I'm gonna go right to the top of that tree."
Oh,
I
yeah.
got over and I started climbing up that tree, and I got up 10 feet, 20 feet off the ground. I still climbing. I gonna go all the way to the top.
Sure.
And I got up there and I grabbed over. I distinctly remember I reached over and I grabbed a limb just over my head on the left side. Then I reached over and I grabbed a limb on the right side just over my head. And I started pulling myself up. And I got up to a crotch in the main part of the tree.
Okay.
And I looked into that crotch, and there was a timber rattler
Oh,
looking me right in the eye.
oh,
And I said, if I get bit on the head, I'm going to be dead before I hit the ground.
my.
And so what I did is I leaned back real slow to get out of his striking distance because I know they can strike about a third of their body length.
Yeah.
So he wasn't a big one. He was a pretty small timber rattler. He may only about 3 feet. So if I get back like about 18 inches or 2 feet, then he would be out of his striking range and I could get the heck out of that tree. And so I backed off and just lowered myself down, and I got out. I said, if there's one there might be more. I'm not climbing that tree anymore. I got down on the ground, and I mean,
Oh,
to this day, I can tell. Like if I saw that snake today, I'd know him. I'd say, yeah, you're the snake that was in that dang tree in South Georgia, weren't you? That was you. That was you, not your brother. It was you. Yeah, yeah. That was it. It just yeah. It burned it. It burned into my consciousness. I'll tell you. Wow. I think that's the closest I ever got. Well, that I can know of that got snake bit. I mean, whoa. There was lots of snakes down there in Georgia.
Yeah, couple time getting bit by snakes.
Yeah,
Quite a few actually, a lot more
and
than
they were big ones too. That was just little babies. There was some big old daddy and mama snakes down there. I mean, it was nothing to see a 6 foot rattler. Nothing. That was like, man, that's just another rattler. And yeah, and it was probably, and we saw 7 foot, and I swear there was some 8, 9 footers, but I didn't measure them. I didn't take a tape measure. Oh, let me see.
Let me
You're
see.
8 feet long. No,
It's
but
just
there was some big ones. There was some big ones. Yeah.
one of those like gas stations, sit around all the old guys at the gas station saying like, one time I saw an 8 foot rattlesnake, and
Yep.
he was this big round, and the head on him was like the size
Yep.
of a wolf, something like that.
Right. Well, they had a this now. I was about I was about 100 miles or so from the Okefenokee Swamp, which is a national wildlife. It might be a national park. Anyway, between us and Okefenokee was swamp, and there was a place called Banks Lake, which was not that far away from us, probably
Yeah.
a couple of miles. And it was a regular cypress swamp, full of critters, and but it was apparently it had a dam. Apparently there was somewhere it was an artificial lake because they would periodically drain it. And so one time we were there, and I can't remember exactly what year it was, but we were there, and they drained Banks Lake. And so all the fish and everything were all flopping around the ground. The gators were all running around. Anyway, they were out there, and there was now these good George boys. They'd go out there. They would go out to where the water was just about drained out, was where all the fish were. So they would walk out in this mud flat out to this little pond in the middle of this big lake where the last of the fish were hanging out. And they would grab them fish. Oh, they'd be fishing with their hands, and just catching these big old fish. Anyway, they got it down one day. They drained it down, and in the middle of this pond or this lake was a giant freaking hole. I mean, I'm talking like 2 foot in diameter and just going down out of sight where you couldn't even see the bottom of it. Really. Yes. And they said, "Oh, whoa! I think that's probably a lungfish." And I'm going, "A lungfish? Yeah, there's a fish called a lungfish that can burrow into the mud and live basically without having any water." And everybody said that's a lungfish. It went down in that hole.
Like a
And
lungfish.
other people say, no, it's got to be a gator. It's got to be something. But nobody ever really saw what was in that hole.
That's creepy.
Yeah. That's because those swamps, they got, your creature from the Black Lagoon. Hey, I think he lives in Milky Swamp. There's some weird stuff out there in those swamps. Because for one thing, the tannin in cypress trees dyes the water to a real thick brown tea. You can't
Yeah.
see more than a foot, and that so here's this giant swamp with this water in it. You cannot see anything. There could be a critter down there a foot below the surface, and you couldn't see him. And so, yeah, it's spooky. I did not like being around him swamped. I'm sorry. I just wasn't. Now we had neighbors uh, that grew up there,
Yeah.
and they would go out in those swamps, and they would net fish at night. They would wait out. No, seriously, they would wait. They would go out on the edge of the swamp, and they'd build a campfire, and they'd all be sitting around drinking beer and everything. And then they'd say, "Oh, let's go fishing." And they would take these nets. They'd take like 10 people or so, and they would string this net out. They would wade out in the swamp and string this net out, and then pull it slowly towards the beach, toward the bank, and all these fish would be caught behind that net,
Wow.
and they just take and grab them and
To go
throw them
on?
up on the beach. And there is no way in the in my wildest imaginations would I go out in that swamp and catch some fish. Now Vietnam, now I went into swamps, but I don't, they just were different.
It
They
was,
weren't.
yeah,
The water was different colored, and the critters were different. And there was, for one thing, there was no alligators. Now there was water snakes, no water moccasins. Water moccasins are mean. I mean,
yeah,
they're a
they're
mean
very
snake.
aggressive snakes.
They'll come after you. They'll chase you. Not
Oh,
like any other snake. The water moccasins will. They don't. You come in their territory and
yeah.
they'll try to run you out.
Yeah,
That was the worst thing in Vietnam. Freaking leeches. So they were everywhere. And anyway, yeah. Getting off subject here.
I know,
So
I know, I
anyway, going
know.
back.
So,
Let's see. We'll go back to Georgia. I got another Georgia story. So
yeah, go ahead, shoot.
we'll talk about it. Okay. And from my house, probably about 200 feet from my house, is a crossroad.
Okay,
Okay, and in one corner, remember the bus stop with the Davy Crockett jacket? That was on one corner
okay,
of this crossroad, and the other corner across from the store and it was Mr. Ham's house.
okay. So the
And
Ruin
then and
store,
then
and then Mr. Ham's house, and then the bus stop.
right, it wasn't Ruiz's store. It was an old. It was older than any other store in the area. This was going. You're probably going back into like 1870s, 1880s, and it was the family was living in it. It wasn't a store anymore, but it had been a store. Put it that way. Anyway, I was out riding my bicycle one day, going up to the crossroad. I was going to cross the crossroad and go straight on the same road we lived on. I was going to kind of go north on down through there. And I got about halfway out in the road, and I don't remember if I looked or not, but I got about halfway out in the road, and all of a sudden this black car appeared out of nowhere, caught the front wheel of my bicycle on the back bumper, threw me into the friggin' ditch, drug my bicycle about 50 feet, threw it over the other way with all the front wheel all busted up,
My gosh.
and they kept going. They got down the road probably about 200-300 feet, and he stopped, and a black guy got out of the car and
Okay.
looked back at me. Didn't say anything, just got back in the car and kept going. And I went over, picked myself out of the ditch, and I was kind of bruised up. I wasn't
Yeah.
hurt too bad, but I was scared. I mean, it scared the crap out of me and tore my bike up because back in those days they had those big bumpers on the front and back of the cars, and they stuck out a little bit on the side, and that's where it came. My bike went down the back fender, and got caught on that back bumper and flung me off and flung my bike. Yeah, I was damn lucky I didn't get killed
Yeah, you are.
because I didn't see that. I did not see that car. Did not see it. It just came out of nowhere.
It's crazy that he
And
just kind of kept going and didn't.
so about so dad was home, and I came home crying, my bike all busted up. He said, "What happened?" And he said, "I'm gonna call the sheriff." So he calls the sheriff. Sheriff come out. He, kind of talked to me a little bit. I showed him what happened, and went down to the road and showed him, and you could still see the skid marks, and you could see my bike was all bent up and everything.
Yeah.
He said, "Don't worry, son, we'll take care of this." And about 2-3 hours later, he comes up to the trailer, and I was still in the trailer trying, you know, doctoring my wounds, and comes up the trailer, and this black guy with him, and he'd been beat up a little bit. He's had a broken lip and everything,
Oh
and
my gosh.
sheriff says, now I'm gonna quote what he said. Don't take me wrong. He said, "Is this a nigga that hit you?"
Oh my gosh.
I said, "We found a car. We found a black car parked in a house up the road, about a mile. Had red paint on the side of it, just like your bicycles, red paint, and there's a little dent in the fender. And this old boy was drunk. He'd been to a baseball game when he was drunk, and he hit you. I don't know if he said he was the driver. Now there's other boys in the car, but we ain't gonna worry about them. It's just the driver. Is this the boy that got out of the car?" And I said, "I don't know, sir. It was a long ways off." He said, "Well, I'm going to assume he was the one that hit you because it was his car. It was registered to him, and he's drunk, and so he's going to pay for this. We're going to put him in jail." I said, "Okay." That was tough
Mm,
because I didn't want that guy. If he had a family, I didn't want him to go to jail. Uh, but that was the South, and that was during Jim Crow. The black people weren't treated the same as they are now.
yeah.
They didn't have very much. They didn't have much civil rights,
Anything. Yeah.
and the sheriff was he was the
Probably.
law, and you know that old black boy's probably died in jail or something. I don't know, but it was bad. It was really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It must have been hard as a kid to make that, to even have experienced that, to watch somebody being treated like an animal,
yep,
almost, you know. And you didn't even know if that was who hit you. You have no idea.
nope, nope. It was too far away, and that was the same as situation there. And he was way off. He was down the road quite a ways, at least 200, 300 feet,
You
and
wouldn't
he
be,
just popped
you wouldn't
out,
be able
looked
to
at me, and got back in the
anybody.
car. So I don't,
You wouldn't be able to
who
identify
knows?
anybody. Wouldn't matter who they look like. You wouldn't be able to
Yeah,
tell. You wouldn't be able to tell what. You'd probably be able to. He kind of looked a little old.
this is he was a young man. He
Yeah,
was probably in his 20s. Yeah,
it's just so sad. Sad
but
that.
that was, I think that a lot of times that kind of, I think contributes to who I am and what I've gone through in my life was a trauma like that where you're almost killed, you know, that's the next, you're like 1 foot away from dying. It's because that car would hit me head. If it would have been a foot closer to me, it would kill me. No doubt. He was going probably 40 miles an hour. He just smashed me like a bug.
He, I'm sure when he hit you and he realized what he had done, he probably didn't come help
Well,
you or
yeah, he
do anything
stopped.
about it. Like he stopped and realized what he did, but I think probably the fear of realizing what he had actually done was probably more than anything, and that's probably why he left. It's
Yep.
probably why
Oh,
he just
yeah. I know
he was like, I
hit
don't
a
even
white
know
boy. Oh, whoa. That's the worst thing you could do in Georgia at that time with
oh yeah.
for a black man was a mess with a white guy for any aspect. You mess with you're taking your future, your life in your
Your whole
hands. If
life.
you like I mean anything, run over a white guy or especially a white child.
Yeah.
Whoa. I mean if it had been a white man, on a bicycle, but it was a white child.
As a child.
And so that sheriff he was pissed. I'm telling you, he was, because when he first came to the house and interviewed me, you could tell he was going to settle this.
And
And
that's not
he
good.
did.
And you,
He went and
well,
got somebody. There was evidence there, because it was a
wow.
black car with red paint on it, and a dent and all this, and then the guy was drunk, and there's plenty of evidence. But boy, I mean, had no trial or nothing, no trial, no lawyers involved or anything, just the sheriff and a black man.
That really, I think that helped you through your life realizing the value and importance of human life with how much you've had to deal with people through the years and the different cultures you've had to associate yourself with,
Yeah,
especially in the military. I definitely think that it's helped you see the value of human life and why it's so important. You saw that at a young age, you know. You saw why even when people make mistakes, it, even when people make mistakes, they don't have to pay like that, you know.
right.
They're better than that.
Yeah, and if it,
Person's
that's just
more important than that.
that was life in South Georgia,
Yeah.
and you know, that was just a different time, different place, and I was totally immersed in that society down there. I mean, of course, I was basically
Well, yeah.
protected by being a white man, and
Well, and being in the
because there was,
military as well.
you have to understand that part of the world, they had been growing tobacco down there in South Georgia for hundreds of years, and had started to when the slaves came to this country, lots of them went down into South Georgia and growing tobacco and peanuts, and, well, not peanuts, but tobacco and watermelons and stuff that grew really well down.
Yeah.
They were they were doing what I was doing, but they weren't getting paid.
They weren't getting paid. And they were, yeah, and they were under a
Yeah,
law.
it was. There was lots and lots of blacks down there, lots and lots of them. They never left.
No.
They'd been down there for hundreds of years. They had buried their great grandparents there,
Generation.
and of the world they had no respect, no status.
No.
They were like subhumans or something. They weren't treated well at all, and that was
And you saw that. You had to see it
yeah.
firsthand in the culture.
Oh yeah,
And that's
yeah,
that's
a
like you
lot
watch
of
it happen and it's not really much you can do about it. You know, you're a little kid, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. But
Well, good thing is that it's so different nowadays and it's changed so much. Thank goodness for
I know
thank goodness for
I know
laws
Georgia
now. So
boys.
like you're not gonna get beat
Yeah,
up, you know, because you make a mistake.
yeah,
So
yeah. I know Georgia boys have accepted integration wholeheartedly.
oh yeah.
That it's you go down there and they're all working
It's good.
together, going to the same churches, going to the same schools,
It's awesome.
and
And that has to be nice for you to
working
see.
together.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty they've well, I mean, considering where they were 100 years ago and where they're at today is amazing.
That
They
you
have, and it's been really a big change of heart. Those people are, because they're good. Both the whites and the blacks down there are really good people,
yeah.
really hardworking, good, honest people, and I was honored to be a part of that society for 5.5 years. I grew up down there. I left Georgia. I talked about this. I tell you, I was, and you know, I I got, yeah. That's going to be another podcast. It was hilarious. Me trying to go from Georgia to Wisconsin That was probably the,
hot
I
mess.
don't know, I don't know of any place you could, any in America, that's probably the biggest contrast in the entire country.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Oh,
That
yeah.
that'd be hilarious. Like you're
Oh,
weird.
yeah. Yeah,
That's pretty
that's a
funny.
whole nother podcast there
Yeah,
about
we will
trying to assimilate into that society in Wisconsin.
definitely have fun with that one. Well,
Yeah,
we're actually out of time, so um, that was a wonderful podcast, though. I loved all those stories, and that was great, Dad. Thank you. So we're um we're just really getting into some stuff where this is all really fun. But that's why we're here is we want to tell stories and sometimes we get a little bit emotional and that's okay. That's
yeah.
life. You know,
Well,
it's the
it's an
emotional
emotional
things.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The things that we experience as kids that shape us who we are today. We see a lot, especially for you being down in the South. You saw society, you saw the way that people treated each other, and sometimes it was good and sometimes it was very bad. So, and that was one of those situations where it's very bad. But the
yep,
good thing is that you have been able to see the years go by and the change in society and the way that people have learned how to treat and take care of each other and love each other and
yep,
to grow together. That's the one thing that I love. You know, we can all be friends with each other nowadays and respect and love each other's cultures. That's the good thing
yep,
that's the great thing that we have nowadays. We will pick up next week where we left off. Thank you everybody for joining us here on Kelly's Chronicles. We love that you guys all join us. We love telling stories and just having a good laugh every once in a while and joking around and um, just enjoying each other's company. So we hope you guys all have a wonderful week. Please be careful out there out in this crazy traffic and careful with the seasons changing and there's snow coming. So everybody be careful out there on the roadways. But we love you all. Thank you so much for the support and we will see you next week.